I, 20M, never expected my own father to be the person I'd one day have to prove wrong. He wasn't abusive in the way people imagine, with bruises or broken dishes. No, his weapon of choice was his words. Cold, cutting, constant. Ever since I was a kid, he made it clear that I was a disappointment. If I showed excitement about something, he'd shut it down. Don't waste your time, he'd say. Not built for success. He said it so often, I started to believe it. He mocked every dream I ever had. When I told him I wanted to be an artist, he laughed in my face. You think anyone's gonna pay for your doodles? He sneered, grow up. It wasn't just disapproval, it was humiliation. He once tore up my entire sketchbook in front of me because real men don't waste time on crayons. My mom didn't defend me. She just stood there, looking through me like I didn't exist. By the time I hit 18, I had no support, no self-esteem, and no idea what the hell I was supposed to do. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay under his roof any longer, so I left. No plan, no college, just a duffel bag, $100 from working part-time, and a stubborn refusal to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crawl back. He told me I'd be back within a month. You'll fail, he said with a smirk, and when you do, don't expect a warm welcome. That was the last thing he ever said to me. And for the longest time, it echoed in my head, especially on nights I was sleeping in my car or skipping meals to afford rent. But every struggle, every sacrifice became fuel. I wasn't going to prove him right. At first, I did what I could to survive, odd jobs, night shifts, anything that paid, but I never stopped drawing. I'd sketch during lunch breaks, after work, sometimes even on the back of receipts. One day, a customer at the gas station saw a doodle I left on a sticky note. Turns out she was a junior designer at a small firm. That tiny moment changed everything. She gave me her contact, helped me build a portfolio, and eventually helped me land a scholarship to an art program. From there, it snowballed. Freelance gigs, local exhibitions, commissions, a bit of social media traction. By 20, I had my own online art store, regular clients, and even a growing fan base. But more than that, I had confidence, something I never thought I'd feel. Oh, and I was engaged to the most amazing woman, 29F, who believed in me more than my own parents ever did. Then, out of nowhere, our paths crossed again. My father, older now, a little grayer, still carrying that same smug expression, except this time I wasn't a scared kid, and he wasn't the powerful man I used to fear. He didn't recognize me at first, but the moment he did, I saw the flicker of something in his eyes. Shock, then denial, because what he saw standing in front of him was everything he said I'd never be. And trust me, I was just getting started. Growing up, my father ruled our house like a king, except his version of royalty involved zero compassion and total control. He was obsessed with being a real man, constantly reminding me that weakness was shameful, that emotions were for women, and that success only came through obedience to his way of life. That meant factory work, tough skin, and silence. Anything outside of that, especially creativity, was met with scorn. The older I got, the more vicious his criticism became. It wasn't just about what I did anymore, it was about who I was. When I started showing interest in art, he called it a phase. You'll grow out of that soft crap, he said when I was 10. By 13, he was calling me a failure in training. By 15, I stopped showing him my sketches altogether, but he still found them. Once, he went through my backpack, pulled out a comic I had drawn, and made me read it aloud at dinner like it was a joke. He and my uncle laughed so hard, they cried. I did too, just not for the same reason. My mom barely reacted. She'd sit quietly, eyes glued to her plate, like she'd made peace with the idea that nothing was ever going to change. I remember silently begging her with my eyes, say something, please. But she never did. I don't blame her completely. He'd worn her down too. Years of insults, control, emotional manipulation. I think she just gave up long before I even realized what was happening. School wasn't much better. I didn't have nice clothes or expensive supplies. I was the weird kid who draws anime, and teachers didn't exactly go out of their way to support me. I got bullied for being quiet, for caring about art, for not being good at sports. The only place I ever felt like myself was when I was sketching. Alone, hidden, safe. It was the only time I didn't hear his voice in my head. I remember this one night, clearly. I was 16. I stayed up late finishing a piece I'd worked on for weeks. It was this detailed cityscape full of neon lights and characters I created from scratch. I was proud of it, like really proud. I taped it to the inside of my closet door so I could see it in the morning. Big mistake. He found it the next day, called it a pathetic fantasy from a boy who'll never live in the real world. Then he ripped it down, crumpled it, and threw it in the trash. Told me to stop wasting electricity on nonsense and start learning how to be a man. I didn't eat that day. I didn't even cry. I just sat in my room, staring at the empty wall, wondering why trying to be happy made him so angry. Things finally hit a breaking point when I turned 18. I had applied to a community college without telling him. Art program. It wasn't a fancy school, but it was something. I got in. Scholarship covered most of it. When I told him, he didn't yell. He just laughed. I said, wow, they'll let anyone in these days. Don't waste your time. You'll be back here in 6 months begging for a job at the plant. That night, I packed a bag. No dramatic fight, no screaming, just a quiet goodbye to the version of me that spent every day trying to earn love that was never going to come. I left before sunrise. My mom didn't even ask where I was going. She just stood in the doorway, arms crossed like she was watching someone walk off a cliff. The first few months on my own were brutal. I worked in a gas station, took on freelance gigs nobody else wanted, and slept in a shared apartment that had more roaches than furniture. But I felt free, and even in the chaos, I kept drawing on napkins, sketchbooks, digital tablets when I could afford them. I posted my work online under a pseudonym so nobody could trace it back to the failure my dad raised. Over time, things started to click. My art got shared, a local gallery reached out, then a company asked me to design cover art for a campaign. And just like that, I started to see the version of me I'd always believed could exist, one he never allowed me to be. That's also when I met her, my fiance, 29F. Brilliant, confident, and the first person who ever made me feel like my voice mattered. She saw my sketches and immediately said, "You're seriously talented." No hesitation, no backhanded compliment, just honest admiration. It hit me harder than any insult my dad ever threw at me. I didn't realize how starved I was for belief until she gave it to me freely. We built each other up. She had her own story of struggle, and we just clicked. She pushed me to go bigger, bolder, and dream without apologizing. And the more I leaned into that version of myself, the further away I got from the broken boy my father raised. But life has a twisted sense of timing, because just when everything was finally coming together, career, relationship, self-worth, I got a message from an old friend back home. Apparently my dad was in trouble, laid off, struggling financially, and worse, he was looking for me. He had no idea who I had become, and definitely no clue that I was in a position to change his life, just not the way he expected. At first, I thought maybe I'd just ignore the message. After all, I owed that man nothing. He made it clear I was a waste of space. But curiosity is a funny thing. I started wondering, what does rock bottom look like for someone who always acted like he was untouchable? So I asked my old friend to tell me more. And what I heard? I won't lie, it stirred something inside me. My dad had been laid off after 30 years at the same factory. No savings, no severance package. The company had downsized, and he wasn't considered useful anymore. Apparently, he'd been bouncing between part-time jobs and unemployment checks, struggling to keep up with the mortgage. My mom had moved out a year prior. Turns out, she finally found the courage to leave. I didn't blame her. I just wish she'd done it sooner. But what really caught my attention was this. He was reaching out to people, asking if anyone had connections, leads, favors they could call in. One by one, people were turning him down. And now, he was asking about me. He didn't know about my art business, or the social media following, or the brand I built under a name he'd never associate with mine, but he knew I did something with design. That was enough for him to think I might be useful. And suddenly, after years of being told I'd never be anything, I was important, I decided not to reply right away. Instead, I started planning, not just to see him, but to show him exactly who I'd become. First, I made sure everything about my business was polished in public. I updated my portfolio site, linked my press mentions, and posted a recent interview where I talked about how art saved me. No names. But anyone who knew would know. Then I contacted a lawyer. I wanted to do this right, not out of emotion, but strategy, because here's the twist. I wasn't just going to show him who I'd become. I was going to make him ask for help, not knowing he was asking it from the very person he discarded. A week later, I got an email. It was from him. It was short, cold, and completely transactional. Heard you doing something with graphics. I need work. If you have anything I can do, send details. Dad. No apology. No, how have you been? Just entitlement dressed as desperation. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I forwarded the message to my lawyer and replied as my business account, not my personal one. I made it clear he was reaching out to a company, not a son. The reply was professional, distant. Thank you for your inquiry. We're currently reviewing applications for limited contract work. Please send a resume and a brief cover letter describing your experience. He responded the next day. His resume was pitiful. 30 years of factory labor, no digital skills, and a cover letter that basically said, I work hard and learn fast. He had no clue he was speaking to me. And that made it all the more satisfying. I sent him a mock assignment, a test task, something simple. Formatted document, follow instructions, deliver on a deadline. I gave him 3 days. He missed it. No explanation, no apology, just silence. I followed up. He said he forgot and asked for another chance. I gave him one, barely concealing my amusement. He fumbled again. This time, the file was corrupted and sent late. At this point, I had everything I needed. I scheduled a meeting, a video call under my brand's name. I told him we'd be discussing the position. When he joined the Zoom, he looked tired, worn out. That same arrogant energy was still there, but dulled, like he couldn't quite admit how far he'd fallen. Then he saw me. The silence was deafening. He blinked once, twice. I could see the gears turning, the disbelief, the slow horror crawling across his face. Wait, he mumbled. Is this some kind of joke? I smiled, polite, professional. Hi. I'm the creative director here. You've been communicating with our company about a contract position. I'm here to inform you, you're not a good fit. He just stared, mouth half open, no words. So I continued, you missed deadlines, you failed basic instructions, and frankly, you lack the qualifications. Now, if there's nothing else, I have another meeting. Wait, he said, voice cracking. You? This is your company? I tilted my head. Yes. He looked stunned. But how? You left with nothing. Exactly, I said. Nothing except talent and drive and the need to prove that everything you said about me was wrong. He tried to recover, stuttering some excuse, but I cut him off. You never believed in me. You tore me down every chance you got. And now that you need something, you come crawling back like none of it happened. But it did happen. And I remember all of it. It was a long pause. For the first time in my life, he looked small, powerless. Then came the cherry on top. Oh, I added, one last thing. You know that art scholarship I got? The one you laughed at? That was the foundation of this entire business. I let that sink in. He didn't say another word, just clicked off the call, and I sat there for a minute, breathing in the silence. That was the moment I realized. That was the revenge. After that call, I figured that was the end of it. I'd said my piece, he got the message, and I could move on, but people like my dad don't let things go quietly. A few days later, I got another email, this time from his personal address. No subject line, just a wall of text, rambling about how I was ungrateful, how I was twisting the past, and how he was the reason I toughened up enough to survive. I didn't respond. 2 days later, he called my business number, left a voicemail pretending to be calm, saying he wanted to talk man to man. I ignored it. Then he tried contacting my fiance on LinkedIn of all places, sending her some message about reconnecting his family. That was when I knew this wasn't over. He wasn't just embarrassed. He was spiraling, and I had to make a choice, walk away or finish this the right way. So I did what I should have done years ago. I told my story publicly. Not in a petty or vengeful way. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I just wrote a personal blog post titled, The Man Who Told Me I'd Be Nothing and How I Proved Him Wrong. I talked about growing up under constant criticism, about being told my dreams were worthless, about rebuilding from scratch. I shared the art that had been mocked and the success that came from refusing to give up. I ended the post with one simple line, sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's becoming someone so far above their imagination, they can't even comprehend it. Within a week, the post went viral. Artists, creators, even mental health advocates started sharing it. My followers doubled, my brand traffic exploded. A well known online magazine reached out and asked if they could feature the story. And I said yes. Suddenly, I was being interviewed on podcasts, asked to speak at virtual panels, and DM'd by strangers telling me they saw themselves in my words. Meanwhile, my dad was losing his grip. He tried messaging me again, this time angrier, accused me of slandering him even though I hadn't mentioned him by name, threatened to set the record straight. But it was too late. The truth had already hit the air, and he couldn't twist it anymore. Because this time, I was the one holding the pen. The final nail in the coffin came during a live interview with one of the art platforms that had supported me from the beginning. The host asked, if you could say anything to the person who doubted you most growing up, what would it be? I looked straight into the camera. I'd say, thank you. Because without your doubt, I wouldn't have needed to rise so high just to see you in my rearview mirror. Mic dropped. That clip alone got over 2 million views. And that's when he stopped trying to reach me. No more emails, no more calls, just silence. Exactly the kind he used to weaponize. Only now, it was working in my favor. What he didn't know was this. I wasn't just trying to prove him wrong anymore. I was rewriting the entire narrative. I bought a house that year. My fiance and I designed it ourselves. Every wall, every detail, every piece of art in that place had my fingerprints on it. The kid who used to draw under blankets so he wouldn't get yelled at now had an in-home studio with a skylight and custom shelves full of his published work. And guess who saw it? My uncle, his brother, stumbled across my viral interview, reached out. We hadn't spoken in years. He said, man, you really did it, huh? Then he dropped a little bombshell. Apparently, my dad had watched the interview too. He didn't say much, my uncle told me. But I saw his face. He looked hollow. Good. Because that's what happens when you spend your life tearing people down. You end up alone, surrounded by the rubble you created. And me? I wasn't standing in that rubble anymore. I was standing at the top of everything he said I couldn't build. And it felt damn good. After the interview went viral, it felt like a door had slammed shut behind me. And for once, I didn't need to look back. The world I'd built for myself had nothing to do with him anymore. No part of my success was rooted in his approval, and I finally understood what true freedom felt like. I wasn't just living to prove him wrong. I was living because I wanted to. My fiance was the first to say it out loud. One morning, as we sat in our new kitchen, sunlight pouring through the windows, she picked jazz humming in the background. She looked up from her coffee and said, "You're not angry anymore." And she was right. I wasn't. I used to carry that anger like armor, thinking I needed it to survive, but I'd already won the war, and I didn't need to keep swinging. My life had grown into something so beautiful and real that his voice, the one that once lived rent-free in my head, was finally gone, replaced by my own, clear, steady, and proud. The offers kept coming in, art exhibitions, brand collaborations, even a book deal. I started mentoring young artists, kids who reminded me of myself when I was younger, scared, uncertain, but full of potential. Helping them felt like healing some old part of me that never got the support it needed. My fiance and I traveled. Paris, Tokyo, New York, cities I once only saw in magazines now had my artwork hanging in galleries. We celebrated every milestone together. No apologies, no shame. And when I proposed with the ring I designed myself, she said yes before I could even finish the sentence. But of course, life had one last surprise in store. Months later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from him. The tone was different this time. No arrogance, no fake tough guy energy, just quiet desperation. He wrote about losing the house, about how people had turned their backs on him, about how he didn't expect things to end up like this. He said he saw the interview, said he recognized himself in the story, even though I never mentioned his name. He said he was ashamed, but what stood out the most, he asked for forgiveness, no demands, no manipulation, just a single line at the end that read, "If there's any chance to make things right before I go, I'd like to try." I stared at that letter for a long time, and then I folded it up, slid it into a drawer, and walked away. Not out of spite, but because I finally understood that closure doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from choosing peace. And I had peace. I had a career, a home, a future. I had love that was real, friends who were family, and a version of myself I was finally proud of. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't even need an apology. I just needed to know that I was no longer the scared kid begging for scraps of validation. And I wasn't. I was the man who made it, who turned silence into strength, who turned pain into purpose. And most of all, I became everything he said I couldn't be.